For many model train enthusiasts, Walthers is a household name. Founded in Milwaukee in 1932, it started when the young Bill Walthers wrote a series of articles on building train control and signalling systems. That led to so many requests from other modelers that he began making them himself. Those humble beginnings have turned into a global brand, manufacturing and selling 10 proprietary brands and over 150 other brands, including Bachmann, Faller, Atlas and Kato, to name a few. The business is very much family-run, passed down first to Bill's son, then grandson, and now great-granddaughter, Stacey Walthers Naffah, who's been at the helm since 2018 and who has kindly agreed to talk to me today. Stacey Walthers Naffah, it's such a pleasure to talk to you today and to talk all about Walthers and the business and what's coming down the track, excuse the pun. So tell me a little bit. Walthers is primarily a family business with this long and proud history of making and selling everything a model railway enthusiast could possibly want. As the fourth president in the company's history, how do you view its progress so far and what do you hope to achieve over the coming decade?
Well, first of all, I have to say thank you so much for having me. I'm so pleased to see your energy in our industry and the attention that you're bringing to it. So thank you so much. So it's a real neat opportunity for me to speak with you. So Walthers, yes, we are absolutely a family-owned and operated business and have been for 92 years as of May. So that's quite a feat in and of itself in any industry. To get to 92 years and 4 generations of family ownership and operation. So, and we happen to do it in this really cool industry. So yes, we've been doing this for a very long time. And I think the thing that I'm proudest of is honestly that the legacy that started with my great-grandfather, who's in the picture behind me. He's my great-grandfather and he was an enthusiast and really came to this in a really interesting business story. Where his business was failing in the Depression and wound up kind of pivoting to his passion to kind of share his love of our hobby and share the skills that he had turned into products, which turned into really a legacy. So my great-grandfather, that passion started it, my grandfather stewarded it, my father stewarded it, and now I have the really neat opportunity to continue that stewardship into the next generation. So there's a lot there in 92 years to unpack, but what I get most excited about is this next chapter. I came back intentionally to the family business because I think it has so much promise. And I came back as somebody who actually wasn't in the family business for my whole life. I came back because I chose to, because I believe in this hobby. I think that being a mom of young kids at that time, I could see the natural enthusiasm for our hobby, and I could see how our hobby wasn't exactly ready to invite that natural enthusiasm in and bring it forward. So I think in my tenure here at Walthers, in my chapter or my generation, what I got most excited about is what we've been working on, which is inviting the next generation, or not necessarily just the next generation, people who are unfamiliar with our hobby, to join with us and to prove out that it's absolutely relevant today and has lots of relevance for today, but also for 10 years from now and, you know, our 100th anniversary and beyond. So anyways, that passion and enthusiasm, while I don't have that same passion and enthusiasm for electrical engineering that my great-grandfather does, I have this enthusiasm for our hobby that I think is kind of the through line that goes across all generations.
And we touched on it there. You've grown up with a family business. And was there ever a time you thought model railways weren't for you? I know you took time out, you came back, but has it always been an interest, or were you at some point in your youth thinking, you know what, not really sure I like this hobby?
I've been around the family business my entire life. Absolutely. I will say that our family business and our chosen hobbies haven't always been the same. My great-grandfather, his hobby and his business were the same thing. I've always been fascinated by our hobby. I've always found it really intriguing. So I worked in the business, much like other best practices in family businesses. I worked where I was qualified to work. So I worked stocking. I worked I worked on our reference book, which is, something that's very unique and very Walthers. So I was always around it, but I actually wasn't a practicing member of our hobby. And so I'm sorry if that disappoints people to hear that, but that is the reality. And my hobbies are different. I'm really into arts and music. And so I guess my family never had pressure to be in the business. And what I think is probably the coolest part is it is best practice in family businesses that get to be as old as ours that a person shouldn't come back to the business unless they want to and unless they're qualified to. And so I took that very seriously. So I really took my time to discern that. I worked in different industries, which is definitely a best practice in family business, and then came back because of an actual like kind of a burning drive that came from me on how to come back to the hobby. And so I saw it through the eyes of my son, who was really, really into trains, and I could see that I wasn't exactly being invited in as a mom, or he wasn't being invited in. And so that really lit my passion and kind of combined my skill set that I'd been working in my previous career. And then I had gotten some skills that I think prepared me for general administration and leadership at that time. And that's when I came back to the business. Um, so sure, my life, I guess I never really thought that I was going to be running this place someday. I mean, sure, the thoughts went in and out of my head, but it wasn't like that was my goal. I've just pursued meaningful and interesting work that, kind of lines up with my passions and my skills. And then it led me here, which is pretty neat.
I think on that note, I think that the model train world, if you're on the periphery of it, it has this unique ability to draw you into its center of gravity somehow,
Mhm.
if you are
Yeah.
open to it. And I think it's about that being open and not having a closed perception of what model trains are all about. That it's, a fuddy-duddy hobby or this or it's that. If you're open to it, there's so much in that world, in the world to appreciate, isn't there?
Yeah, I 100% agree. And if I looked at it and I came back to the family business through the eye of my son, I came back to it also seeing some pretty interesting trends as just a general marketer and a parent and an interested person in the world. So you could see STEM and STEAM. Even, 15 years ago, that was a trend that was apparent. And you're like, if kids can like Legos and they can like robotics and they can be into, and we need to develop our workforce to have engineering skills. And people want to just actually relax and do things that are creative or use their hands to build things when we're getting too disconnected on technology. All those trends were like, wow, we have a lot to offer. And that was a personal and a professional observation. But I continue to be just so personally impressed by exactly what you just described. Is there's so many different points of entry, and you can pull anyone in who really is a curious individual. And what I love about our hobby is there's so many skills you can learn, but I think one of the best things is that it brings people together. We talk a lot about here at Walthers about building a connected community, and where we say where the little things matter. And bringing somebody who's got the skills of wiring together with somebody who's great at scenery, with somebody who's got the story idea for the layout, and they come together in a club, or they're talking online about it, or they're going to shows and visiting each other and learning from each other. Gosh, that's something that actually has been going on for our hobby through time and memoriam, and it's more relevant than ever today.
Absolutely. And I'm going to touch on that just in a little bit because I think that social connection is vital, I think, in today's very disconnected world
Yeah.
sometimes. So the next one is the biggie, that question I always like to ask, what's it like? Come on, Stacey, being the female boss of, let's face it, quite still a male dominated hobby.
So I find those questions to be interesting because I've always just been me. Like I'm just doing the thing that I do. So I don't really think of myself as a female leader. Of course, I am a female leader, but I'm a leader inside of an industry that has a certain demographic that I acknowledge is older and primarily male. But if I go back to why I came back to the business, it actually really did tie to the absence of an invitation to a huge sector of the population, which could be wildly engaged and frankly is engaged. Maybe there's just not an awareness of it. So I think that I've always been kind of a person who likes to bring people together. And if you ask friends or family about that, I love the concept of like, give it a shot. Let me invite you in. Let's talk about this and how could we work together. So I think that's kind of it's like a secret strength. Maybe it's just my personality. I don't think of it as a female thing. I certainly have had people say things to me that are questionable, but I think most female leaders have. So I don't know. I don't really dwell on it. I love the people in our hobby. And I think that if I can help people to understand maybe how they come off to somebody who's new to the hobby or a female in the hobby, I think that's something that is beneficial for them to understand. And I think it doesn't just benefit, not really about me, it's really about doing that kind of open invitation thing where we should be a little bit more empathetic to people in general and listen better. So I don't know that it's stopped me. I've certainly seen comments, but I don't really give them a lot of credence or value. Frankly, if they're saying, could she do this because she's a female? Like, wow. I've done all sorts of things. I don't know that I would ever ask that question directly back to a man. So I don't really consider it to be a factor.
On that note, a lot of model railway clubs that I see here in the UK still have quite a small female presence. What would you say to them about how to encourage more women, but not just women, other groups that are underrepresented in the hobby? What would you say to them to encourage more people into their clubs?
I think I'd say open your aperture, just think differently. It's going to benefit the hobby to be as open-minded and as welcoming as possible. So I think that that's just kind of a general good way to operate in your life. So if you could think about like, okay, rather than spending energy or time saying, oh, we don't have new members or we don't have people, well, let's take that same energy and direct it to, well, who could we invite? And, how could we think differently about this? And is there somebody who could, bring in younger people or, talk to other clubs about how they're finding success with it? I do see that there's more women that are coming online. I do see more young people coming online. That is happening, and they might not be as visible to the traditional clubs as possible. So a club might consider, looking online and getting involved in some more social media things. I think there's a lot going on there that just might not be as visible as who shows up to a club gathering or operating session.
Definitely. I think it is a question of mindset, isn't it? If you go into something thinking we don't get new, no one's going to join, women don't want to join, children don't want to join. If you go in with that attitude, you get more of what your mind focuses on, don't you? So if you
Yeah, I
start with
agree.
a how do we?
I think it's pretty simple, and I think the other thing that I think that this hobby struggles with sometimes, and it's an interesting tension, which is people who have been doing this hobby for 50 years have accumulated a lot of skill. I mean, they really have an expertise, and that expertise itself is part of the hobby. Sharing that expertise, it can sometimes be intimidating, right? So I think that sometimes you have to remember that once upon a time you were a beginner too. So just remember that you are a beginner too. And maybe if you could put your mindset back there, whoever that person is that you're talking to, if you just imagine yourself when you were trying to get started and maybe back it up a couple steps and help them understand, well, this is what I struggled with. This is how you can find success. Here are some resources. I think that's also energy better spent. And I sometimes think that that can be a barrier that people might not be as aware of as as they think that accumulate. It's like talking to a PhD when you're in the 101 class. The PhD has a person has the choice of how they engage with the 101 student.
I want to ask, what do you see as the main challenges right now affecting the hobby and the industry?
The biggest challenge, it's interesting because I know you got a lot of questions and a lot of the people who will watch this have questions, figuring out how to do everything in this niche marketplace, right? So everybody would like us to make this thing or that thing or, the other thing. And figuring out how to support the general business stuff that we need to do. If businesses have to invest more, just to operate a business, and then we have to figure out how to, right size our investment for the tooling that we're gonna, invest in for whichever scale or whichever locomotive or whichever structure kit we're gonna build. There's some tension there. So I think one of the biggest challenges that we've always faced is figuring out how to satisfy everybody, right? Because you're never going to satisfy everybody. So we do our level best to try to figure out how to do that effectively. Um, but we do recognize that we won't be able to, satisfy everybody. So that's what I see probably is the biggest tension is how to invest appropriately for the future, and product being so important to what Walthers does is probably one of the biggest things I think of. Surely the generational shift that everybody hand wrings about is something that I could dwell on. I don't really. I honestly think we have a ton of runway. I think we've got a lot of people, our core demographic and people who have loved the hobby are retiring. They have time, they have money, they have grandkids. Of course, not everybody has money. So if you don't have money, there's clubs and ways that you can engage in maybe a smaller way in your hobby. I just feel like there's a lot that we could be looking at that's positive about the generational shift. Um, and I think that we've got some really good ideas kind of coming. Um, we're always talking about ideas that are going to help the current generation of our customers. And we're real excited to think about what happens for the generation behind us. So that might be the answer that everybody expects I'm going to give, but it's really not the answer I'm going to get.
In such a competitive world, you touched on businesses, finding it's been a tough few years for everybody and businesses included. How does Walthers distinguish itself from competitors, and not just the established ones, but there's some new kids on the block, if you like, coming up through the ranks? How do you set yourself apart?
Yeah, well, we have such an interesting dynamic here at Walthers because we are in so many different categories of the hobby. We kind of touch all of it, right? So we are a manufacturer of product in pretty much the broadest range of products of anyone. I can't think of anyone. I mean, there are some actually in the UK, maybe a Hornby or something who's got something in pretty much every category that they're producing, right? But we also are a distributor. We are a direct to consumer seller. We support hobby shops. We support other manufacturers in a very collegial way. And that is actually how we've operated for our entire history. So I don't know. I think it's more cooperative and collegial than people maybe think. I go back to my investment kind of concern or question or challenge is that if we're all making the same stuff, um, that's not going to be great, right? And there are a lot of things that we can be producing. So um, I do think we try to be mindful of what's on the market. We try to, if we see an opportunity to maybe, do something that we feel like we can be best in class at, we'll take that opportunity. But we try to keep a pretty holistic perspective. And ultimately, the product that we create, we make it so that the end user is, surprised and delighted by it, and that it operates really well and delivers on their expectation. That's our primary job. And that's how we think about kind of what we bring out. Um, so we actually cooperate a lot with, people people might consider our competitors. I mean, I regularly speak with and sit on boards with, Atlas and Bachman and Kato and Kalmbach, now Firecrown. Like we're on like the world's greatest hobby board. We're on the MRID Council of the HMA, working to advance the hobby as a whole. So in some cases, we might not produce something, and so they help us with, a product. Woodland Scenics is helping us with something. Our Build a World. I think you wanted to talk about that. We work together quite well. It's actually a really neat part of our industry that actually shows up in how people operate. Who enjoy our hobby operate too. We're working together oftentimes. But our job in the true competitive, spirit is to just make great product and let the end user decide. And if we don't win, that's on us. And I love seeing new entrants. We've seen that over 92 years. There's been a lot of companies that have come, there's some that have gone, there's, so I like kind of the entrepreneurial nature of our hobby. I don't see it as a bad thing. I think it's a good thing for the hobbyist.
I love that, surprise and delight. I think that's sums up model railways completely, doesn't it? Surprise and delight. What a lovely way to sum it up. And on that note, I guess, how important is it to you that the smaller retail, the hobby shops, stay in business? We've seen quite a few close.
Yeah, it is critical. It is critical. And we do have people who challenge us on that and say, how can you say that and still do the things that you do, and sell direct to consumers? Well, we do our level best to try to support the hobby shop. And the way that we operate our business is we really try because we think it's critically important. We have a tangible hobby. You need to be able to touch and feel it. You need to be able to go into a shop where you can experience it. You need to have somebody who could talk to you about the opportunity or the challenge. So I think personally that like the actual physical retail experience is critically important for the long-term health of our hobby. We have some kind of core beliefs around here, and we believe a healthy hobby shop makes a healthy hobby is one of them. And so that's an interesting balancing act. And honestly, at Walthers, we've been selling direct because not everybody had a hobby shop back when, in their area. So we had, mail order that we would send. So that was one of the ways that we could reconcile both, is that we just want to keep this hobby going and supplying people. The internet has created some complexity to that and some new opportunities because people can get things, much easier from a variety of sources. But I do think that I really favor the idea that people need to have a physical experience with their hobby. So whether you're selling at a show or you're selling in your hobby shop, or you're selling online, because a lot of our successful retailers, you have to have an online shop. Like we're going to do our best not to compete directly with them, or we're going to figure out a way to balance it all. And because we're so interested at Walthers in the hobby being successful long term, there's no like kind of light switch answer of how you do it. It's more nuanced. And I think we've got really great relationships with a lot of hobby shops. And we've figured out a good way to do it. And if for some reason they've got some feedback for us, we try to do our best to really represent that what we're trying to accomplish here is a shared objective, which is giving access to people to experience our hobby in a really positive way and get the product they need.
Let's talk about Build a World. What a fantastic concept. Talk me through the whole idea, how it started and how it's been going.
Yeah, so Build a World is one of these examples of a project that gives evidence to how we're thinking differently about bringing new people into the hobby. So this idea came up, gosh, a while ago, and we launched it pre-pandemic. Yeah, pre-pandemic. And really, it breaks down into the idea of simplifying. So I think in our hobby, one of the things we need to do, I kind of made that PhD to one-on-one reference earlier. We have to break it down and simplify it for folks if we want people to join us. So I think that that's kind of the nugget that drives Build a World is making it more accessible for people, and teaching them how to get started. So Build a World, breaks, for those of you who don't know, Build a World is a 6-month subscription program, and it breaks it down, and you're working on a project essentially. And the project, ultimately concludes with a great diorama. And you've learned a whole bunch of skills along the way. We give you the tools to do it. We give you the materials to do it. We give you the instructions to do it. And so I think we've been happy with how it's gone. It's not like a rocket ship that, is blasting off the planet or anything. But I think what's been really neat to see is that we've gotten a lot of feedback on it. And in some cases we've learned how to take our hobby and simplify it. So those materials are really beneficial. I know one of your followers asked us about like our instruction sheets. Like it helps us to rethink our instruction sheets for somebody who's coming at us for the first time, where we might have written those, a while ago for an enthusiast who'd been with us for a long time. So anyways, there's learnings I think that are translating into how we operate generally. They're one of the coolest things that I think have come from Build a World. But I think the people who have done it have enjoyed it. My brother and his family did it. I think we learned that maybe it's harder with younger kids. So we've kind of retooled it a little, but we've had enthusiasts, people who've been in the hobby for a very long time who have chosen to do it. And it was kind of a cool project for them that was away from their layout. So it was kind of a separate way to do their hobby in a smaller setting.
What are the main challenges and barriers you think Build a World has overcome that have been obstacles to people taking up the hobby?
Yeah, Build a World was designed to overcome barriers, and principally the idea of, space, uh, time, knowledge. Those are the biggest ones. I think cost also could be thrown in there. But knowledge, I would say, is probably the lead one, in that, it's really designed to be a series of learning opportunities that yields a really fun outcome. So we've provided the information to be successful, but breaking it down and making it and simplifying it so that people can really kind of drill into some skills. And we've heard that from newcomers, people who have, never experienced our hobby. And it was also interesting to hear feedback from people who have been around our hobby who wanted to actually develop some more skills in some areas, like namely scenery. So you've got somebody who might have been, more involved in operations, and that was kind of their core interest in the hobby. Use Build a World as an opportunity to teach themselves, how to do scenery a little bit better.
Fantastic. So tell me, this sounds fascinating. The market or the area that you're venturing into or have ventured into with the upper age group and seniors in who've left their home. Tell me a little bit about the work that's going on there.
So we are just embarking on some really exciting programs that address exactly that. They're really not fully launched yet, but I'm really excited about them. Namely, we're going to launch a program that builds actually about from what we learned with Build a World. So kind of that small module in the middle. And actually it takes you earlier learning, kind of a smaller application, and then a bigger application that looks more like what people are traditionally interested in with a club. And we're going to take that concept to senior living facilities. So we've actually started to launch this program and bring it to senior living facilities who are looking to bring really great amenities to their communities. Actually, they're called communities. So that we're learning about this marketplace. And so communities want to have they have activity rooms, they have, and in some cases, some have model railroads. But there's not kind of this very systematic approach to it, or it's a little bit too dependent upon a resident who lived there, had the interest, did that, and if he or she, mostly he, leaves the community, they don't have somebody to support it anymore. So we're trying to make it easy for a senior living community to get engaged with our hobby, and so we've created this really great program that has kind of a small project, a medium-sized project, and could end in a club. And we've simplified it and taken that same level of kind of the same approach that we took to Build a World with simplifying our messaging and our instructions so that somebody who doesn't have experience with model railroads, like an activity director, could actually find success with our hobby, and then invite more people in. So we're really excited about this, and we think that this could also, the structure of this program could have application in schools and even in science centers that could engage with younger people too, because the concept of small, medium, large really helps with an on-ramp to our hobby that, back to our concept of open invitation, could be followed by just about anybody who's interested. But we think there's a huge opportunity to help people in senior living communities to really enjoy our hobby. And there's so many great things about our hobby that people who live in a community, an active senior living community, could enjoy.
What a fantastic idea. And I love that whole idea of community, and we need more connection more than ever in an ever increasingly disconnected world. So it sounds like a fantastic project. Do keep me posted, won't you?
I absolutely will. So my team is actively working on it, but back to my like the challenge of business, like how do we get to do all these things? But we're working on it and I really believe that we'll figure it out. But it's early days and the feedback that we've gotten from the senior living facilities that we've traveled to and worked with to develop this program, it's really favorable. So if any of you out there who are watching, want to reach out to us, we'd be happy to, and you are involved in that senior living community, we'd be happy to talk to you as we learn more and as we engage with this.
Great. Well, you heard it here. Stacey is inviting everyone. That sounds great, and I'm sure you will get a lot of interest. We often think of the younger market, but there's a whole demographic, isn't there, that needs that connection more. So that's fantastic. Moving on. So you may have heard I'm building my own layout and looking currently on the
Yeah.
lookout for bits and pieces. I noticed quite a lot of your products do have. I'm working on a layout that's based on a British film, very classically, quintessentially British. I noticed a lot of your products do have a very British feel or sensibility about them. Is that some intentional, or what do you look for when you are designing products? Who are you marketing to?
So I guess I'd like to say, first of all, I have to say your layout is so cool. Your
Oh,
monochrome layout,
thank
what
you.
a neat idea. So I can't wait to see you're working on a new one, another
Yes,
layout.
yes,
Oh my God,
it's
I
the
love the whole
lady
idea of
colours.
doing this. It's so fun. Anyways, okay, we'll have to talk about that another time, but I think
Mm,
that's just so great. Um, I think what we do is we do we model what we see, right? And so I would say that we do all of our product engineering in-house. All of our design happens here. So I do think that actually kind of like 1940s and up is of what you'll see, but North American buildings is really what I think we primarily do, but a lot of things do translate well. So we just try to do things with broad appeal and then let customers, customize in the way that is interesting to them. So I think a lot of our structures, I know that you've, customized structures for the purposes of your layout. I think we see a lot of people do that. They kit bash things, they put it together. So I don't know if it's intentional or accidental, but we do like to make product that has broad appeal. So that's good to hear.
mhm. And speaking of that, what are your most popular products here in the UK? There's been a very successful launch of the locomotion, number one. Is there a similar appeal in the US for those the early days of steam, the early locos?
You know what? We are seeing actually kind of the opposite. So we don't have that same trend. I actually had to research that trend once when you asked. I think you tipped me off to that a little bit before we met, and I wasn't aware of it. So now I need to learn more. But what we're seeing is people are modeling more modern. But I personally am always fascinated by steam, so I don't think that's ever going to go away. I think everybody loves. I mean, who doesn't want to see a great, one-to-one steam locomotive? And I think that the miniatures are always going to be of interest to people. So we don't necessarily have that same trend. I don't think that's going to go away per se. But we are seeing kind of the opposite, that people are modeling more what they're seeing now, more modern stuff.
What are the key trends you're noticing? You said that over the course of your tenure at Walthers, you've been on the edge of seeing all these great trends. What are the trends now? I noticed that N-gauge is becoming increasingly popular in the US.
Yeah, so that is definitely a trend that we're seeing. HO scale still is the largest scale here in the US. Um, I think the drivers of that are definitely space. I do think we get a lot of requests for more N scale product. It's a challenge for us to satisfy all of that on top of what we're doing. So I acknowledge that, and we're doing our best. But we are watching that, and I do think that there is a younger audience interested in N scale, um, and I think that they're talking amongst themselves, encouraging each other. I think much like anything else, a community grows when it's vibrant and active. So I think the N scale community is really vibrant and active. And I know that they don't always feel satisfied by what we're doing at Walthers, but we're listening. We're still listening to figure out how we can plug in a in an optimal way there. And I think that Cornerstone is a great way that we do it today, because we really have invested in new structure kits that I think our Cornerstone kits are really remarkable and a strength of Walthers.
Well, you very kindly agreed to take some of our viewers and followers' questions. So I have a few here for you. Let's start. And this question comes from Richard Wenzel, and he asks, does Walthers have any plans to re-release the Amtrak Amfleet passenger cars? They're impossible to find anymore.
So thanks, Richard, for the question. We don't always share everything that we're coming out with, but we absolutely have Amtrak on our radar, and it definitely is a strength of ours. So something that we will add your comment to our suggestions, and who knows, maybe it'll come back, but we do know they're popular. And so stay tuned.
So another question, this one's from Andy Gautry or Gautry. I hope I got your name right there, Andy. Could you ask, considering the issues around duplication that we see in the UK market, what Walthers thinks about the risks of two manufacturers producing exactly the same model?
You know what, there is risk there. I guess if you look at it that way, if two of us are doing the same thing, in some cases, maybe we have too many of them on the market at the same time. But that said, sometimes there's a difference between the brands. So even in our own product offering, we have a proto line product that has the highest fidelity of detail. We've got our mainline product that's a lesser price point with a lot of detail, but maybe not as much as proto. There's differences inside of our own line of products. So there's oftentimes differences between our product and another manufacturer's product, even if it's the same model. So maybe it better fits your price point or your interest in a particular road name or a particular level of detail. So we think that there's room in the hobby for multiple models of the same. And then obviously there's the performance of it, right? You want it, certain people really want it to operate well, and we really stand behind the way ours operate. At the same time, we can't make everything. So there is a benefit to us, not overlapping. So I think that in a perfect world, there'd be more models out there that spread a wider variety so that people could, have more options available. And we partner with a lot of manufacturers in that way unintentionally, right? Because we are a seller of a lot of our products. You might consider them our competitors, but we also consider them our partners, like a Atlas and a Bachmann and a Rapido. Like we support and sell their products alongside the ones that we produce, because at the end of the day, we want modelers to be able to create the miniature world of their own creation, and it takes a lot of equipment to be able to do that. So the duplication issue comes back to, there's a limited pool of money for all of our businesses to be able to invest. And so you would just hate to have us duplicate and then not be able to have as many products for you to serve. So I think that or to be able to benefit from. So I think maybe that's the biggest risk there.
Dominic Aman would like to ask, I'm curious how Walthers see the direction the hobby in the US is taking among new and old hobbyists regarding gauge, era, electronics and sound, and sales volumes. Also, how much of their product is sold in other markets outside North America?
Yeah, I think we still see the HO scale as the largest scale, by popularity and product releases and by volume. Certainly M scale is growing. That's certainly a trend that we're seeing, which is exciting. Various, where are we selling? We're primarily selling still in North America. So yes, we absolutely sell out of the US, but our primary sales are through, or are here in North America. We do use distributors in other, in the UK, and but by volume, our business is North America.
Referring to Dominic's question, do you see the hobby is still kind of getting older, or is it getting younger? Are we seeing younger people? Is it changing?
You know what? I think it is changing, which is good. What's really exciting is the things that are not changing in some cases is that we do have this group of core customers that are still very interested and they're engaged. So if the if the baby boomer is our core customer, you know, the baby boomers are a very large group of people, and they're very excited to be able to spend more time on their hobbies and in some cases encourage the enjoyment of their hobby cross generations. So they might have more time with grandchildren who they want to do something constructive with. So I think that that's a neat thing in that customer base, sure, their lives are changing, but they're able to do more of the things that they've loved to do their whole life, or maybe they're getting started in it now, which is super exciting. And then they're sharing it with young people, which helps bring them on board. So that's where we've kind of consistently seen young people coming into the hobby, is typically when they're introduced to it by someone who had enjoyed it in their earlier life, oftentimes a baby boomer. I would say my generation wasn't invited as actively as perhaps the one prior to me. But I think that cross-generational invitation is still really strong. I also think that social media and channels like yours are really encouraging more young people to get involved in the hobby. They're finding the hobby in new and different ways. And this isn't just a brand new thing. This has been happening over my time at Walthers. And, you know, I've been back at Walthers as a career since 2009. So I've seen that social media gets a bad rap and the internet gets a bad rap sometimes, but I actually think it's doing the job of connecting our hobby and inviting new people in ways that we might not be as visible to some people who have been traditionally around the hobby.
And it will be interesting, won't it, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, to see just how it's changed and what's happening in the industry and the hobby. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I also think that what's interesting for me as a parent is, and even getting back into this business after not being around it for my whole career, is just when you start talking to people who are unfamiliar with it and you talk about the benefits of it, you know, getting kids off of screens, teaching them STEM and STEAM concepts, like in a tangible way, having them connect with other people, like you start talking about these benefits and people who have never heard of our hobby or had no awareness of it are like, yeah, I totally see that value. And it's a very authentic and earnest interest that you can't fake. And they would say, well, just let us know when there's some way that I could, or, you know, get my child involved, or let me know how we could possibly, you know, sign up for something that you're doing, or how you could help me get started because I don't know where to start from. I think that kind of one-to-one interaction that I've had really shows that we've got a moment that we could be capturing with people if we extend that invitation in the right way.
wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Have we got time for one more, a couple more? Gregory Johnson from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. He asks, do you have people other than employees test the kits to make sure they fit right before you put them on the market? He says that he's had some issues with instructions not being quite so clear at times, and sometimes he says the plastic has kind of warped slightly. So what's your answer for Gregory?
Oh, well, Gregory, first of all, I'm sorry that you had a bad experience with one of our kits. So we'll get to that in a second. Because I'll go back to the first part of that question. The first part is, do we have people outside of our company who test the product? Absolutely. So we have long time contract manufacturing partners. They have been working with us for a very long time, and we have quality processes that go back and forth among us. So, you know, they test it, we test it, it goes back and forth. We have really high standards that we hold ourselves to. So we hope to catch that. So I guess that goes back to the concern expressed is that if you found a piece that didn't seem like it was molded just right, you have every right to call us back and to return that. And let us know, because we don't want those to be out on the market. I think you also asked about instructions. So on the instruction side, sometimes it depends on your level of skill, right? If you're coming in and you're an experienced modeler, maybe our instructions are clear to you. But I will say that we've had some kits on the market for a really, really long time. And it might have been clear to us when we wrote those, you know, years ago. And so we acknowledge this and we've heard this feedback before. And so when we have the opportunity, we're going back and we are reviewing our instruction sheets to make sure that they capture kind of more than just the expert modeler. And if there's, feedback that we've received that makes, makes it easier for someone, even if you're an expert or if you're a brand new person, to try to refresh them. So we do have a regular process by which we refresh our instruction sheets. So that too, if you had a particular piece of feedback on one instruction sheet that wasn't clear, I'd ask that you send that our way and we'll do our best to make it better.
Mike Pigden, he has a question about the cost of products. He says, is there any way to make products cheaper, but so, of course, you can still make a reasonable profit? I.e., he says, thinner plastic in the kits, or making the kits without any windows or parts or roofs, because most modelers have a box of things that they can use. What are your thoughts on that, Stacey?
I think that we're always looking for ways to make our product accessible to people and to have a wide variety of price points so that people can be enjoying their hobby. So great suggestions. Definitely will bring those back. I think that we are regularly reviewing, kind of our the designs themselves. So that would speak to like the thickness of the walls and the materials. Yeah, we're looking at that to figure out how could we kind of evolve. So great suggestions. I would say that it's part of our process. So while I might not have a definitive answer for, kind of what evidence is that today, I would say that that's kind of the way we think about things, is making sure that we have a wide variety of price points for our customers and options available so that they can stay active in the hobby. And we recognize that our hobby, it requires discretionary time and discretionary money. So we're mindful of that. Whereas it might not look like that, we really do kind of try to offer a wide variety for the people who are ready for the splurge or for that small thing that they want to do that will keep them active even if they don't have the budget at that time.
Now, a question about track, and it's Anton Maza. He says, when can we expect Walthers to start producing double slip and three-way switches or turnouts? I'm patiently waiting, he says, with a very smiley face there. And on that note, there is another question from Henri, let me just get his name. Henri McCaston, who says, when will 12mm gauge Shinohara turnouts be available again?
Well, I can say thanks for the interest in our track line. And we've really been so pleased with the reception of the marketplace. I mean, over time, we have the Shinohara brand. We've actually rolled the Shinohara brand into our own Walthers track line and made improvements on that. And we're really proud of that. So over the last, say, like 6 years, we've really brought that back online in a new way. And so we are constantly looking for ways that we can expand that line and add in, code 70, 83, and 100. I will say that Anton's question, that's on our list kind of things that we're looking at, but we just can't make everything all at once. So we're not exactly sure when we'll get to it, but we can commit to the fact that we're, that's on our radar. And so I guess, just be patient and we'll do our best to try to get that one out there sooner rather than later. But it kind of goes back to the question about, can we make everything, for everybody? And we can't, but it's definitely, it's on our radar. And the turnout one, I'm less sure about, but I think I can confidently say that we'll continue to support our track line and try to have new releases that keep people modeling.
So Anton, watch this space, I guess is the answer there. Stacey, thank you so much for answering some of those questions there. I want to sum up now. And if you were talking to somebody who's new to model railways or doesn't even know one thing about model railways, what would you say to them to try and encourage them into the hobby? How would you explain model railways to them?
Oh gosh, that's a big question. I can answer it in lots of ways, but I just think we call it the world's greatest hobby for a reason. There's just so much you can do with it, but really fundamentally, it's so creative and it's so much fun. My dad used to say that to me regularly, that we have to remember that we sell fun. Sometimes we're getting a little serious because it is a business and we're trying to serve, we're trying to do a lot of things, but at the end of the day, like, we got to remember that our job is to sell fun. So I probably would say those two things to someone who was trying to get involved. And then I would probably expand into, gosh, there's all these ways that you could connect with people that you would never probably connect with otherwise. You can learn a lot of things. You can teach your kids to learn a lot of things. It can get you off of screens, but you can also be totally engaged. You can be engaged with technology. So it probably wouldn't be a very quick conversation. I would really have their ear for a while, but I could keep it short and stick with, it's really creative, it's really fun, and they're great, great people that they should want to connect with. Because what a neat opportunity to connect with you and so many people in our hobby. It's really a privilege, and I remain just so impressed by what people do with the products we create. So I want to keep supporting that, and so hopefully my enthusiasm would rub off on them and they'd choose to do it themselves. That's what I hope would happen.
Oh, I'm sure it would, Stacey. Absolutely. Yes, it can be frustrating, but let's remember it's fun. It's meant to be fun. It should be fun. And thank you, Stacey. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And I think the more people that are aware of our hobby and all these great things that you're sharing with people about it, the more that they're going to want to join. So thanks for doing what you do to get people excited about it.
If you like this video, please do like, share and subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified of all my future videos. And why not browse the shop at modelrailwayquest.com/shop. And to receive a 10% discount on everything in the shop, become a Questie. Join the Model Railway Quest membership to receive that discount and a whole bunch of perks and goodies. Details on how to join are above. I'm Dawn Quest, and this is Model Railway Quest.